This is probably as good as it's gonna get. I recently have been posting a couple of photos on my Instagram, and I actually put kind of an all call on Instagram saying, hey, if you guys would be interested about me doing a YouTube video on my iPhone editing. And a lot of you responded and said yes. I had a couple of people who said no, and I like to point those people out and put them on display and publicly shame them. It's 3:05. Oh my gosh, it's 3:05. It is 3 p.m. Holy crap. I didn't know it was that late. Yeah, public shaming. I'm not gonna do that. I'll be the better person since it is Sunday. I don't think I can really publicly shame someone on a Sunday during Lent too. So cool. I got everything prepared. It's 3:07 in the morning. I got my candle lit. Cause that's what I do on Saturday nights. I just light a good candle and listen to some good tunes, drink a Monster.
He's on bang, they're on bang, my cameraman's on bang.
Drink Monsters, listen to music, and just
Had for breakfast, bang. Guess what I had for lunch, bang. Guess what I had for dinner.
sit in my apartment and think about world-changing ideas that no one will ever hear about because they're in my mind and they're not on paper. Finding like a good playlist or a good track kind of helps me get in the feeling a little bit of like editing and everything like that. I do edit a lot of time just listening to music and just kind of hearing that emotion kind of carry through. It helps me kind of paint a little bit and
load some color into it, both sides of the brush.
that's definitely one thing with iPhone editing is it is an emotional process for me, I guess, because I'm just an emotional guy. I feel like to make a YouTube video, you just gotta do a bunch of random takes and do a lot of zoom ins and then try to make your voice sound distorted. I don't know. I've been watching a lot of Emma Chamberlain's old videos prior to her leaving YouTube, and they're gold. So I've been really absorbing a lot of her content. So let's import the iPhone photos into our catalog. One unique thing about the iPhone 13 Max, that's kind of the main catalyst that's made me want to take a lot of more, is the iPhone 13 not Max, the iPhone 13 Pro. And that's kind of been the catalyst for me wanting to take more photos with my iPhone because the camera quality is insane in regards to image quality, and they're just getting better and better. I use I think the biggest attribute that I use on the iPhone 13 Pro that I haven't used in any other camera a lot is the 3x feature, just because it kind of gives you that compression with your subject, and that has been just a beautiful thing to be able to kind of play around with. And haven't used portrait mode too much. I don't use portrait mode too much, but 3x feature is really, really good. Even at 3x and you have a subject in front of your camera, you usually get a little bit of depth of field, not much compared to portrait mode, but it's something to just kind of play around with. And also another attribute that I've really, really loved and I guess and kind of enjoyed, especially during the nighttime, is using the iPhone's RAW DNG mode. So now you can take RAW images on an iPhone. And I've noticed especially at nighttime photos, you get way more leverage with being able to push the shadows up or kind of expose for a lot of stuff you wouldn't be able to expose for. And the noise reduction, especially at nighttime with iPhone photos, is insane. I don't know what algorithm, I don't know what kind of magic they put into that, like their AI system, but there's like no noise in regards to taking nighttime photos with an iPhone. It is a beautiful sight to see. It's just so clean. I mean, the grain is probably there, but it's just so clean. It's just they cleaned it right up. That's the funny thing about it. It's like you take the prettiest and cleanest photos, and then with every one of my photos, I always put grain back into it, digital grain back into it, and it's just kind of I guess it's a love-hate relationship. You want a clean image out of your sensor, but then you put the grain back. Yeah, okay. So to kind of get a little bit into the iPhone, I'm gonna take you guys through a couple of the photos, and we'll kind of do different scenes in regards to how I'm gonna shape, or we're gonna do a couple of different scenes to kind of give you a couple of different variations of how I edit photos at different times and different settings. So hopefully I can be like a Bob Ross of iPhone editing. I don't know. I think I need to get my, I think I still have my training wheels. So I have my candle, and maybe the next video I'll start playing more some soothing jazz. Whatever. Okay, so I'm gonna take you through a couple of the scenes. So Vernelli's, this is in Birmingham. I just took a couple of night photos. I think this is raw DNG. couple photos there. This is during the fall. I really loved this shot just because of the rims were kind of wacky, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I was shooting it straight, so I loved the fact that it was kind of going on a downhill slope. I know I was going to take you through a little bit of the iPhone, but I also want to take you through a little bit of how I took these photos as well. So this is in Mobile. This is just kind of a cool truck. It's still there. It's kind of a staple. I hope even anyone who buys this property leaves that truck there, because it's just kind of a cool little timepiece for that building, I think. Mobile is really, really great place for finding places or kind of settings like this. This is my friend Trey. Yep, with his fake tattoo right there. Yeah, he got I think it's a henna tattoo, so it's a 2-week tattoo. But yeah, he's just crying in a corner. I was like, Trey, you're crying and you're emotional, and I wanted to take your picture. So we took his portrait. That's a kind of a close up, more teary eyed. I was like, okay, Trey, you're really getting into character now. I need you to cry a little bit, and we didn't get the full teardrop, but we did get that kind of that beautiful glistening droplet in his eyes. So that was really pretty. Ooh, there we go. I'm starting to get it. The really beautiful glistening thing that. So this is just kind of a random place in Bessemer. I was on a real estate job and I found this place and I was like, oh, this is cool. Very overgrown. I loved how it was kind of peeking out of the brushery. Peeking out of the brushery. With the little chimney and everything like that. So I kind of like explored their property a little bit. I love taking detailed photos. This is where the 3x feature in the iPhone really stands out, just because it's just, I don't know, just the compression of it and making it feel just bigger. I just love it, and I mean the quality of it's insane. So that's always a good thing. Here's a photo. This photo is, I think it's already edited. So we'll do some tweaking of this one. Another unedited photo. So this is of Mobile. This is kind of a bridge. When you go over the Africatown Bridge, and I just thought it was a cool setting. It feels kind of like a movie poster, so I just wanted to shoot it that way. And even when I think about stuff like this, I think of like this, like, you know, this is a movie poster, so that'll definitely play into how I color and edit the iPhone photos, because I always want to give it more of a cinematic feeling to it, kind of a very extreme, kind of dramatic look to it. So that is something I think about when I take iPhone photos as well, so maybe something to kind of keep in mind too. I keep looking back towards the camera. I think it's kind of uncomfortable because I'm like, do I look good, or you know? So I gotta keep on the screen. So this was a snow day that me and my buddy, that's Mason, and yeah, we were one of the first ones to go out in the city during the snow day, and it was awesome. I think we were out there till like 1. So, and it just snowed again in Birmingham recently. So there's Mason again, looking all moody with the red lights. Mason again looking all moody but looking away. Green lights. This is my friend Aaron Spigner. This is when we were out in Arizona. I don't have time to go through all these photos. Okay, I'm just gonna take you through a couple. Cool, this is in Arizona. This is the flight in Arizona, because did you really fly if you didn't take an airplane flight photo? The answer is no. You're a fraud if you didn't take it. And honestly, how dare you not flaunt the fact that you're flying? That's just ridiculous. Cool, this is a little bit more Mobile. This is the steeple, Mobile. This is Waffle House. This needs no explanation. Everyone should know what Waffle House is. It is an American delicacy and treasure. This is me looking all moody in a Goodwill store. For some reason, I thought it would be cool. To take a self-timer photo with no one in there. But really what this speaks is I have no friends, and I just thought it would be cool to take a lonely iPhone photo. So, take that for what you will. This is my apartment building. This is Mobile. Cool. This is Orange Beach. This is a pelican. Perfectly placed. Just standing there, just posing for me. This is flying. This is me. This is Aaron. This is when we were on one of our trips for a construction exposition. Cool. This is Birmingham. There's a couple people. Cool. This guy was so cool. Just a cool dude all around. Just a cool dude to get to talk to. I love, you know, whenever someone is comfortable enough to want to be able to talk to me, and I try to ask them a couple of questions of who they are, and you know, and we kind of just sometimes we get into deep conversations, sometimes we don't. But this guy was just a really, really good dude, really cool dude. And I was like, can you just like smoke? And I've done that with a couple of people that I've taken pictures of. I'm like, can you just bring your cigarette and smoke, because it looks a little bit more cinematic. They're always down for it. I think it's funny. I think that might be one of my character traits. Whenever I take portraits of people, they have to smoke a cigarette. I'll just bring some Marlboros or whatever, or fake cigarettes, and be like, yo, I know you don't smoke, but smoking is cinematic, and all the cool kids are doing it, and we should do it for a photo. This is a really cool guy. He owns a barbecue shop in Fairhope. Very, very cool guy. Another just cool experience just to get to talk with him. I thought that was a championship ring. Very cool dude. This is a cool instance. This is just a guy I took a picture of in Mardi Gras. He was on a dirt bike, and it just gave me very like the movie Spring Breakers, like kind of very wild anarchist vibes for some reason, because you have the house and you've got I don't know, just, it's Mardi Gras. It's not anarchist, but it just gave me the dirt bike with like the gear that he was wearing, and this house just looks like very Tim Burton-esque. So I was like, okay, this gives me kind of like more movie vibes. So I took a picture of it. Lady, I went very quickly up to this lady and just said, hey, can I take your picture? She was wearing a beautiful coat, and she was shining. Yep, another guy, Mardi Gras. These are a couple guys I met, Mobile. This is a guy from Syria. I took a picture of a coffee shop. Cool. All right, I'm just gonna jump into some iPhone editing. So, hopefully my screen recording is still going. All right, bang!
Charge your Tesla with a fucking...
Let's just jump right into it. This is one photo I took in Mobile on a very beautiful sunset-y type evening. And yeah, I really just kind of wanted to kind of capture the light. I really was drawn by the light and, you know, kind of the focus around the van. Okay, so let's jump. All right, kids, let's jump right into it.
With us before, please allow me to thank you.
So I guess kind of one way I would approach this photo is obviously I would crop it for Instagram because it's gonna go on Instagram. And I would really just start playing with the exposure. So the exposure for me, at least the way I dial it in, a lot of the terms and a lot of the mindset of how I kind of go about my photo editing is from my experience with working with DaVinci Resolve and color grading, and thinking about how exposure works in DaVinci, and thinking about how color and color theory works in DaVinci and how I've learned it there, is I'm thinking from my experience color grading actual footage. And that's a lot of that carries over to my photo editing and vice versa. So what I would do is try to set the overall exposure of this. And really what that means is just the overall shit. What was that? Am I being too loud? No. Cool. That was someone, but luckily I'm not being too loud. So basically what I would do is, okay, let's go back to exposure. So exposure is basically kind of the metering of, for me, where I find like where the midtones and shadows sit. So if I want something a little bit heavier, I'll usually bring the exposure down a little bit. So the midtones and shadows are just a little bit deeper. If I want the exposure higher, the midtones and shadows are gonna be lifted a little bit. So you're gonna be able to expose for more of the image, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how I look at that. I usually don't mess with the exposure too much unless I really want kind of a dark and moody image, and I'll kind of keep it around there. So for something like this, I'll probably bring the exposure down just a little bit, just so I can kind of really get kind of the deepness of the kind of the sunsetty vibes of it, and really kind of bring out those blues. So maybe another thing too, so when I'm thinking about this, oh man, this is nerve-wracking. I feel like I'm saying the wrong things, or I'm scared to say the wrong things. Basically with this, so it's at the midtone, so it's at the exposure. So for something like this, I really do want kind of the deepness of this. I really want this kind of a little bit more under exposure here. So I'm just gonna kind of bring that down so I can kind of make this a little bit darker. So maybe something like that. So to really bring out kind of the sunsetty vibe, so maybe for something like this, I'm really just gonna start playing around. I usually will always start with my tone curve, and I'll start with the tone first. So kind of the main tone curve here is really just kind of metering, it's just the contrast curve of the image. So basically you kind of just, I mean, this obviously operates the highlights, this is the midtones, this is the shadows. So this is where I kind of always start out. I set my exposure first, and then I start building in the tone curve. And my tone curve is usually pretty much the same throughout it, and this is kind of the way the tone curve has worked for me at least. So with this, I usually, for me, this is the tone curve that I use that I think looks the most filmic. And I've kind of looked at film in general and kind of looked at how they do their contrast curves, and honestly how film kind of is developed and how kind of that tone is kind of mapped out. film to me, at least from the tone curve perspective, looks very coppery, especially in the highlights, so that they're capped off to a certain extent. So I always kind of bring, I guess I can kind of visually show this. So yeah, I kind of always bring, and you can kind of see this. I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit so you can kind of see the highlights a little bit more. So what I'll do is I'll bring this down. So you see how the highlights are kind of flattening down? That's kind of the flatness I kind of see in film. I will usually end up just bringing that down just so it's a little bit flat. The image looks a little bit flatter and it's not as detailed, especially in the highlights. So, all right, I'm gonna bring that tone curve down, perfect. And I'll set a point here too. All right, and then one thing I usually end up doing as well, and this is like a key figure to kind of making more of a filmic kind of tone curve for me, so I'll set a point here, and this is kind of like mid highlights, and I'll just really kind of contrast this out. And you see how like those highlights, even though they're flattened, they just look kind of like, I don't know how to, they look a little coppery. And I think that's one thing I always try to strive for. So if it really comes to this, especially when I extend that out. So like, it just looks, I mean, it's able to maintain a lot of that highlight, but it's also just makes it look a little bit more coppery. So that's kind of like how I go about kind of facing my highlights. And then from there, I'm gonna start kind of messing around with more of the darker midtones and shadows. For something like this, I do want something a little bit darker, maybe something a little bit less contrasty, not too contrasty. And then this is my favorite part, and it's the most typical part, and that's kind of lifting the shadows. For me personally, I've gotten a little bit more reserved, I guess, with bringing kind of my shadows up, because stereotypically this is like more of a P&W vibe, and I think this is a very early 2000s, like 2013 through 2016. Everyone was like, yo, let's bring that tail up and let's bring our shadows like super flat. And I think that was more, a lot of the creators that I followed were from the P&W, so it makes sense that they wanted more of a foggy vibe. And I used to do that a lot, but now from what I'm seeing from a lot of the work I follow, they keep it very reserved with how they bring the shadows up. So I really kind of try to find like the lowest amount of shadows I can and really kind of just flatten those out. I don't try to do all of the shadow range at least. So I'll do something like this. I kind of like this. Perfect. Yeah, I like this a lot. Yeah, this is looking really, really good. So we kind of got our highlights down, we've got our tone curve made. And this is, for the most part, this is kind of my go-to tone curve in which I use. So flattening those highlights, making a point here. I mean, obviously the 3 points you want to make are, the beginning to your highlights, midtones, and here. But the most important points that I think for me anyway is the midtones, because this is what I really control the contrast with. And then this point here, because if without this, the highlights would almost go back to normal once you started pulling this contrast up. And I don't want that. So I'll always make this point here so it kind of maintains that flatness. I wish I could go back and forth, but oh, does this make sense? Or does that make any sense? I'm gonna say pre-workout every time I drink this drink. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of the tone curve. If you want to screenshot it, if you want to do anything with it, this is my go-to tone curve. And this is kind of how I kind of control it. So now, what I'll do now is I'll start thinking about color. So this will also be within the RGB curves. I really like messing with the RGB curves just because it's the fastest way to get a heavier look. And that's one thing I want to mention too. I remember one colorist or a YouTube video that I watched about a colorist, and he says people don't go far enough with their color grades. And that really clicked with me because I was like, that's so true. It's like I'm so minimal when it comes to color grade. I'm so, scared I'm gonna like push it too far. And I think the idea is to push your grade too far, because if anything, you can always bring your grade back. So if you go too warm, you can always bring it back to cooler. And you can always kind of, color grading is a push and pull, and you should see it as that. If you push too much blue in it and you want to contrast it, push more warmth into it, and that's going to decrease the amount of color. So really, for me at least, the best advice that I ever received is that, and that's like to push your grades as far as you can and just see what you like and you don't like. And I think that's what really sets apart a cinematic color grade, is the fact of you pushing that grade too far, for me anyway. With this, I really want to go for something warmer, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start bringing this blue tone curve down to kind of give it those warm vibes. So after that, basically, so I've kind of brought this down, so I want to really kind of want to go cool with it. So I really, really liked that warmth. So let's start. I want to push a little bit more red in the highlights, Here, I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna start messing with this highlights just to kind of get the highlights where I want them, and especially here. Perfect. Awesome. So this is pretty much kind of where I want it right now, at least with the color, with the blue and red. And that's one thing I'll always start out with. And this is a conversation I have with a buddy. And we were just kind of talking about color grade, and to kind of keep it simple when you kind of go for your color grades with whatever you're color grading, whether that be footage, whether that be iPhone photos, whether that be anything, you always start with one color, and it keeps everything very simple. And then from there, it's all really kind of like color theory. It's all about contrasting that one color that you pushed in. So for something like this, I want to go for more of a warmer reddish warm look. And everything after that is me just contrasting that color. So an example of that is just kind of really messing with these tone curves, especially in the red channel, and just really kind of maybe pushing that down so it contrasts the red highlights and the red midtones. So maybe for something like this, I think for me, I don't think I'm gonna do that. I think I'm just gonna start, I really do like kind of those red shadows. It kind of gives it a little bit more life. There's a little bit more life on the coast. And I'm just gonna start maybe, just kind of messing around with a little bit. And I'm gonna go back to the blue channel and then maybe kind of push a little bit more blue. So blue and red make purple. And I kind of wanna do a little bit more purplish kind of tones in here. So let's just start playing with that. I'm gonna mess with some others. I'm gonna mess with some stuff real quick. I really do like kind of the depth of that concrete though. I think that looks really, really good. Cool. So I kind of like that. I like that a lot. I like the color of that. Perfect. I think it looks okay. So let me see. I think what I might do also too here is just maybe see if I can extend this channel so it looks a little bit more like the highlights are kind of a little bit warmer than they actually are. There we go. I think that's giving me more warmer vibes. Cool. Awesome. And kind of separates at least the blue from here and then a little bit more warmer here. Cool, so this looks pretty good, at least from where we started to where we are now, starting with exposure, tone curve, and messing with our RGB curves and our overall tone curve. So from here, I really, really like this look. I think one thing I'm gonna do, just because I am a basic P&W editor and I want my shadows up. I just want that flatness. It just looks so good, it just rolls off so well. I just want a really good looking tail, I just want a good looking tone curved tail. But girl don't want my tone curved tail. She like, I don't know where I was going with that. And I don't think any girl would be asking for my tone curved tail. So, tone curved tail. I don't even know what that means. And I'm honestly a little uncomfortable by the idea of a tone curved tail. Mama didn't think I'd make it this far. All right, cool. So from here, I'm gonna start messing with the HSL sliders. So HSL basically stands for hue, saturation, and luminance. And then that's just gonna be another extension of me contrasting those colors with my overall grade that I have now. So let's start doing that. So I'll start messing with the hue. I'm probably gonna mess with the hue with the green just to kind of contrast that out a little bit. Cool, probably not that. Really not doing too much. I'm probably gonna definitely bring that blue, a little bit more teal. Ooh, let's go some teal and orange, baby. Cool, maybe bring the saturation up a little bit in the blue. I don't know. I kind of dig that. That looks cool. That looks cool, I guess. Maybe with the yellow, definitely because right now the yellow originally looks kind of green. So I'm just gonna kind of contrast that, make that look a little bit more red. Cool. I like that a lot. I'm gonna desaturate the yellow just a little bit to make it look a little cleaner. Just a bit. Also bring down the saturation of the orange just a little bit. I really, really like that. I'm probably just gonna start playing around. I'm gonna go back to my tone curve and just really kind of flatten those highlights out just a little more. Cool. I dig that. Awesome. I dig that a lot. Oof. So right now I'm starting to see some breakage. I don't know what that's from. I'm actually just gonna bring that up. Oh, that's just the image. Is it? Okay, I'm just gonna do this. I don't know what I'm doing now. I'm just gonna try to flatten that out because right now that's really kind of bothering me. But that's in the original. Maybe it's just because I contrasted too much. All right, cool. Dope. So I really, really like this. Really like this image. And yeah, that's pretty much kind of like my basic kind of go-to. I might bring this because I know the purples are a little, purples, you start finding different, every time you edit iPhone photos, you find kind of different iterations of just kind of maybe the kind of color that they built into the camera. And the purples are always kind of annoying because the purples really blend in with the blues, and sometimes you don't know that until you start messing around with it. So this is kind of like a nice little, you know, it's a good basic teal and orange vibe, you know. Sam Colder would be proud. I really like this. I think what I want to do though too is I'm gonna flatten this even more because I really want this flattened because it's kind of in the highlights. So as you can see, I'm doing some wild stuff now. I'm gonna bring this up, something like that. All right, I dig that a lot. Cool, awesome. So this is kind of the image I have now. You know, kind of, this is where we started. This is where we went. I might bring in this blue saturation up just a little bit. Also, another thing to note, if you look at an image too long, this is also the same conversation I had about color grading. Man, that really bothers me. I don't get that. I digress. So another thing that I also wanted to mention, don't look at an image too long. So I would say two things. I would say your environment of where you color grade matters to a certain extent. I usually try to color grade in usually the environment that I see the image in the most. So I usually will end up editing my photos in my car in the shade because I'm like, okay, you know, it's a shady spot and it's kind of the most hopefully most neutral place and the most similar environment that a lot of people will be seeing my photo in. Because say you're in a very warm, say you're in your grandma's house, and your grandma's house was built in the 1970s, and she's got all that. She's got that warm look. She's got super warm like 70s wallpaper with pigeons on it, or you know, whatever she was feeling back then that she thinks is honestly it's probably a vibe now, more of a vibe now because people kind of like that old school stuff. But to get back to what I was saying. So, well, we've been going 35 minutes. Damn. So, yeah, so say you're in your grandma's house and it's a super warm tone. You're going to perceive an image, you're going to see an image differently. The same thing pertains to editing. So if you're in a really warm setting, you're going to edit in bias to that color. So when you see it in, let's say you're editing in a very warm environment and you look at it in a very more of a neutral environment where there's not a lot of color bias, you're going to see that image very differently. And that one reason that is because you edited in a very warm environment. So that's just something to keep in mind. That's the same thing when you see a photo. So just kind of like watch out for color bias. I know a lot of colorists, at least in video, they want to edit in a very neutral setting. So usually it's usually with nothing on. So I have a very warm, as you can see, this lighting was not pre-set up. It is providing a nice little hair light though. So this is a very warm setting. So if these photos do look a little bit, yeah, maybe do look a little bit warmer, maybe warmer or colder, warmer. I'm compensating for it. Colder, okay. If they have kind of a different temperature to it, it's because I'm editing more of a warmer environment. You know, that's why I love editing on my iPhone and editing in the day, because I think a lot of people see my photos in that type of setting. So that's something I keep in mind. Also, you can't be perfect, and no one's gonna be able to perceive your photo as perfectly as you did in the original setting that you edited it in. So number 2, I would say give your eyes a break to a certain extent. You want to edit a photo. You want to try to edit a photo pretty quickly. I mean, ideally you want to edit it within like maybe under a minute, which is not always ideal, but also just give your eyes a break. Like maybe direct your attention away from your iPhone for a second and just wait 15 seconds and let your eyes readjust and bring your eyes back to the phone, because your eyes do lie to you. And that's one thing that took me a while to kind of figure out until I started learning a little bit more into it. And your eyes will basically adjust. So say you have a certain saturation that you're going for in your greens. If you look at that image for a long time, let's say those greens are going to look super desaturated because you've been looking at it for 5 minutes. And that's just because your eyes have adjusted to it and you've looked at the image for so long that your eyes are completely seeing something differently than what you originally saw. So just to keep in mind, a minute to 2 minutes is kind of like, maybe a sweet spot. You'll find your groove with it, but it's just something to keep in mind in regards to it. Give your eyes a break. To be able to take a fresh look at the image that you edited, maybe after you edit it, and then make final tweaks after that. That's one thing I would say. that's about it. I'm gonna probably edit one iPhone photo at night, because we're running in a 40-minute mark, and I don't want this video to be too long. And it's also almost 4 o'clock in the morning, which I just watched too much YouTube. I was watching way too much I was compulsively watching YouTube and not making this video, obviously. So yeah, this is basically kind of the last thing I would do with this photo. This is probably my favorite part. Now that I got my curve, got everything ready, got the exposure ready, let's add some grain, baby. Let's add some grain. It's the moment you've been waiting for. Let's add some grain, baby. That digital noise. Who needs a shoot film when you can add film?
What the fuck are you talking about?
So basically, yeah, with the grain, I usually put it on very, very heavy. Same thing, kind of what I do with my look. I really kind of start measuring the size. And a lot of the references that I pull is kind of from what film I've seen, and I just pull references from there. There's usually, for me anyway, there's kind of a softness to it. So I think I might go right about there. And then as far as like the roughness goes, that's just kind of like how rough you want the film, or how fine-tuned you want the film. I usually go about something like different for different photos. You know, sometimes you can kind of put film grain on for more of a realistic grain look, and sometimes I just put it on for texture. So if I put it on for texture, I usually have my roughness down, something like this, so it looks a little bit more matted, and I usually just do that. But for something like this, I kind of want to go for more of a film emulation. I'm probably going to roughen that grain up so it looks a little bit more inconsistent in the roughness. So something like this I think looks okay, and I'll just like kind of dial it back and kind of just see where it's at, you know. And it really comes with like what you prefer, and you know, whatever you're basing your digital grain on too. So but yeah, kind of feel it out. Perfect. I like that. Perfect. You know, Instagram's just gonna compress it anyway, so might as well go all out. Sigh. Cool. So this is kind of an image. It's a nice little teal and orange image that I edited. Perfect. Cool. That's about it. Other than that, I think that maybe the last thing I do is I really will play around with my texture and clarity sliders. So let's say we're gonna bring my clarity down, and that really helps me, at least. I mean, if you go too far, it's obviously gonna look very mushy and look very like a toddler did it. Like a toddler did it. Toddler did it. You're gonna look like a toddler did it. So yeah, I really just kind of like dial back the clarity slider. Just kind of, there's a lot of highlights in there, and the highlights are bleeding into a lot of the image. It usually sometimes helps bloom the highlights. I don't know how fast I'm talking, I'm sorry. So yeah, I'll mess with the clarity slider to bloom the highlights of my image. So as you can see kind of the highlights are blooming around the edges. And that's something, you know, personal preference wise, you know, it's something you can figure out and see what best works for you. So yeah, I'm gonna go maybe about there, and then I kind of bring the texture slider just to kind of really bring out the texture. For me, kind of brings out like the specular highlights. I see a lot of the like the very tip ends of the highlights kind of be a little bit more pronounced by moving the texture slider, as you can kind of see around here. So if we move it, you can kind of see it start popping. Stop popping.
Meanwhile, you two were standing around, finger popping each other's assholes.
We're not finger popping each other's assholes.
Cool. So let's just stay there. But yeah, that's basically, I might bring that clarity back just a little bit. Cool. And maybe just like bring that exposure down like there. Yeah, something like that. And saturation. Oh man, this is the final. I'm gonna do a little bit more tweaking just to kind of fine tune a little bit more. Something like that. I don't know. Sound a little wild. Ooh, that's cool. Dope. Maybe something like that. Dope. I really, really like this. Cool. So that's where we started. This is where we ended up. Cool. Grain and all, baby. Grain and all. Cool. So I really, actually, really dig this image. This image actually, I might actually post this tomorrow. So I might actually post this. So I can have my friends stop commenting on the fact that I am putting off doing a YouTube video that I said I would do. I just wanted to see how many people cared. I didn't really want to do the YouTube video. I just want to see how many people cared about my cringy iPhone photos that I didn't think anyone really cared about. But apparently some people do. So I'm very, very grateful for you. So, all right, cool. So we have one image. This is more of a sunsetty image. Let's go to more of a nighttime image. Ooh, nighttime. Turn off the lights, get us in my J.
In the club, high up perk with some shade.
I don't know how Miley Cyrus really worked her way into this, but all right, cool. So this is an image I actually took today, and this is just a kind of a cool flower shop that I went by, and I was like, yo, this is kind of a cool vibe. Like I dig the font, and I really just dug kind of the accent colors of the red and green. I was like, this is so cool. It's very retro, and especially with the lights and how they did like the neon under it. From a lot of the movies that I've seen a lot of like, you know, kind of the fluorescents that hang down and kind of add that glow. And it just looked kind of like a really cool throwback store. And I think that's, obviously it is a throwback, and it looks like they've been in business for a long time. I wish I would have gone in there because it looked very retro, like kind of an old mall feeling. So maybe one day I'll go back and like bring a model or something and just do some like model obviously smoking cigarettes with like some flowers, like she just got her heart broken or some shit. So I would like to interrupt this pre-workout segment with our word from our sponsor. I didn't care. So this is an image I took as I was passing by going to the mall in Mobile. So this is a kind of a nighttime image. It really drew my eye just because of the kind of the lights, the old school fluorescence. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. So same thing what we did with that last image. Let's really just start with exposure. So where I kind of want the shadows and midtones to sit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm probably just gonna bring it back out there. Not do too much. I can sometimes, you know, mess with the contrast. Sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. But I really do a lot of that in my tone curve. So this tone curve is gonna look a lot like the original tone curve I did in the other one. Honestly, I probably just will copy that tone curve over to this one. Yeah, let's do that. So yeah, what I'm gonna do is I'm probably just gonna copy the tone curve over from, not that one. Where's it? There we go. Cool. From this one over to this one, and then just kind of delete whatever I need to delete. Ooh, that actually looks really, really good. Wow, I am shocked. Huh. It's cool because it's like very warm shadows, and I didn't expect that. That's really, really cool. I actually might go for something like that, actually. That actually looks really, really good. A lot of grain. Okay, cool. Let's mess with this. Cool, let's take all this off. Cool. Take this off. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Yeah, I'm probably gonna keep that there. Cool, so what I just did, and I'm just gonna delete all of these. Delete this, reset channel. So what I just did is I took the tone curve from our original image that we just did, and I'm just copied it onto this one. And that's what I usually will do sometimes if there's a good film curve that, more of a film, I guess like a filmic film curve that I've liked and I want to copy it over. That's something I usually will do, and I'll just make minor tweaks as I go. So what I did is I copied the film curve we used for the sunset image onto the nighttime image, because that's usually, a lot of the time my tone curve will end up rounding its way back here, because for me personally, I think this is honestly the best representation of what I think film looks like in regards to the contrast curve. So, all right, so yeah, I might do some minor tweaks. Ooh, I like that though. Like really crushing the shadows. Ooh, I mean, this would be more of a, I guess, a realistic version of how film would look. I don't think film is like this. I mean, yeah, if you're shooting on 400 or something like that, I think to a certain extent, depending on how you expose the film, it's gonna look like that. So what we might do is might go for a more of a realistic vibe in regards to the shadows. So what we'll do is we'll do this. Cool, I like that. Awesome, and just really kind of dial in that. Cool, I like this a lot. Perfect. Let's make sure that shadows. Yeah, okay, we're gonna go a little extreme on this too. Cool, I like this a lot. Awesome, we might go like here. Just a little bit, kind of raise that up just a little bit. Cool, awesome. All right, this is a pretty good, fudge, I'm not getting stuck. Cool. So this is a pretty good kind of start to where I want the image to go to in regards to the tone. So I might mess with the saturation just a little bit, just kind of bring out those colors. Perfect. That's kind of cool too, because with film anyway, I really see like the over amount of saturation could be really cool with the warmness of this image. That could be really, really dope. Perfect. I love that a lot. Awesome, cool, dope. We got our saturation, we got a tone curve. So let's dive into a little bit of the color curves of the RGB curves and just start playing around and start painting. And a lot of times too, I don't know if I've said this before, but I'll listen to music just to kind of get a vibe. So like for something like this, is more of a P.T. Anderson vibe. So in some cases, I will put on music and I really will just go kind of begin the process. Like for me, coloring these photos is like painting. So like it is an extension of the, I guess, art or image. I don't know if I call it art, but an extension of the image. So when I take the photo, you know, I'm taking the photo and that's framing and everything goes into that. But for me, color grading is definitely, it's not just photo editing, it is an extension, it's me painting. And it's a lot of the times it's you know, it's a way of me telling kind of that story of that place and that location in maybe the most cinematic way I can. So I always find it very special to be able to kind of photo edit iPhone photos. So we have the tone curve, we have the saturation done, so we've got that. And we also have the grain added in too, which is kind of cool. Let's see, where's that roughness at? Okay, what we might do is just bring that down, just to add a little bit more texture. I really do like that a lot. Yeah, something like that, cool. All right, grain's good. All right, so let's go into our color curves, and yeah, let's just start kind of playing around with the curves and just start seeing where we can go. So yeah, kind of what I said before, you really want to go very far, and then if you need to push it back, you can push it back. So what I'll do is kind of start bringing the highlights down. I really kind of do the original color look of what I just had on there and copied on there was really kind of cool. So I'm kind of going to do that again. I'm really going to kind of accentuate kind of the warmthness of the fluorescence. So like almost like the fluorescents are shooting down a lot of warm light. I'm probably going to extend that into the grade. So what I'm going to do is really start feeling that out. Cool, I like that a lot. Awesome, perfect. And then I'm gonna really kind of just start boosting that red of that fluorescence. Really, really like that. Cool. And something like this, like for me, the contrast to this is like a really kind of more of a warm green. So when I think of like maybe P.T. Anderson movies or maybe more of a P.T. Anderson, a lot of the videos he's made with Haim, the band Haim, he kind of has a similar look to it. So what I might do is do some warm green look to this to kind of contrast that reddish warm highlights we got going on there, and just really kind of finding that good amount of contrast. Good amount of contrast. At Liberty Mutual, we give insurance for you. I don't know where that came from, but cool. I think my voice sounds so raspy because it's almost 4 now. I'm just like delirious. Cool. So yeah, I might kind of play around with that. Actually, I'm gonna definitely play around with the blue. So yeah, so we kind of have more of a red highlight look, more of a warm. I pushed a lot of red to kind of highlight or to contrast with the red highlights and red midtones. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start maybe pushing a little bit more blue into the shadows to kind of give it more of that nighttime vibe. And something I do keep into mind too, I usually don't try to mess with this at all. The only time I'll usually kind of, when you think of like what makes it look consistent with other images is usually the highlights and the shadows. So if I want the consistency across, I usually want to make sure my highlights look the same and my shadows look the same. And one way by doing that is not messing with this end tip here, because that keeps your shadows the same color, and that's pure black. So sometimes I'll usually, if you see me messing with this, it's just because I don't want to color the shadows. So that's coloring the shadows, obviously, unless I want to creatively do that within the image. So that's just one thing to note. I usually don't mess with these if I want to kind of keep consistency in the blacks and keep consistency in the highlights. I don't mess with those end tips whatsoever. So I might actually have to on this one. So I like that. Let's push a little blue in there. And I think what I might do is, honestly, that looks cool, but I really did like that red. Actually, no, I don't like that red. So I'm gonna push that green. I'm really gonna kind of try to focus on this right here and pushing that green, see how far I can push that green to really kind of accent that. Yeah, that looks good. All right, cool, I like this a lot. Really warm, kind of more of a filmic look. I really like the saturation too. Like, I don't wanna pull that saturation back. I kind of like, It's giving me more like very saturated, like the movie, I think it was like Emily or Amelia look, like very saturated greens and reds. So I really kind of dig that look. Cool. All right, so now I'm probably just gonna start playing around with the hue, saturation, and luminance sliders. I'm probably just gonna bring the luminance down of the yellows because I see that in film a lot. I see the luminance brought down in film in the yellows. And obviously I would probably warm up the yellows a little bit. And it's certain nuances like that. Like whenever I think of a look, I think of like all the past looks that I've seen. And I'll try to break up the look by, so the first thing I always try to, like how I break down a look is I break down the look from obviously the exposure. So where their midtones and shadows and highlights are sitting. And then 2, I look at their contrast curve and I'm like, okay, what kind of contrast curve did they push in? And that's basically if you want to desaturate all the color, just what the image looks like in regards to just contrast. So I look at exposure, what their contrast curve looks like, and then I look at hue, saturation, and luminance. So where is their hue, where are their hues sitting, where are their saturation sitting, and where are their luminance sitting? Their luminances are sitting. And I really judge an image off that. And also too, like in some cases when an image is not just based off that, I mean, usually you'll push in, like I'll push in the RGB sliders more if I need to tie in that look more to kind of give it more of an overall look. But that's kind of how I break down looks. And I kind of, for me at least, when I look at looks, I really, like for something like this, I'm like, oh, this is more of a P.T. Anderson vibe. And I kind of have like a Rolodex a little bit. I wouldn't say like I'm great at this, but I would say like I have like a Rolodex of looks, like, okay, we can go for this vibe or we can go for this look. And I think whatever scene that you have, whatever best helps tell that story of that image, that's the color you should go for. And that's one thing that I always want to kind of make stand out in my images at least, is I want that color. And this is why I think color grading is so important, because it obviously is an extension of the story, but it's also an extension of the feeling of the story. And certain colors give you certain different emotions. And certain scenes will give off certain different emotions. So you want that color to kind of extend into that. And that's something that I think is so powerful and I think is very cool about color grading, especially in photos, because it honestly too, photo editing, at least for me, is more practice. So to kind of see what colors contrast with what, and you know, what kind of feeling that gives off, and like, oh, okay, I can kind of put that look in the background, and I see how I was able to achieve that look with just a photo. In regards to presets and what people use and stuff like that, like Short Stash uses different colors. And maybe that's something I might do in the future if I can get this video out, is breaking down other creators' looks and showing you it's not that hard to achieve their looks. So, I don't know. Cool. So we have this look. I love this look. Yeah, I like the shadows, like where the shadows are sitting. They're very like reddish. They're more of a purple vibe. I think what I might do is start playing with the luminance a little bit more. I'm really gonna bring that green luminance down, maybe make it colder. Yeah, definitely make it colder. Bring that saturation down just a little bit. I'm gonna bring the red saturation down. Yep, and bring that red luminance down as well. Just kind of, yeah, something like that. Cool, I really, really love that. Perfect. Yeah, I really, really like this. Kind of more of a warm green tone there. And what I might do is just kind of start playing around with this blue. That blue really punches. Blue for me is really powerful. I love blue. Because blue for me, above any other color, especially more of a magenta blue, will pop and will like, elicits more of a feeling for me when I think of like blues, like especially in the shadows. I usually push magenta in my shadows because it's just a very pretty shadow, and it always, for some reason, it gives me happiness just to be able to look at that blue and be like, man, you're pretty cool, blue. That's cool blue, you know? This is gonna be interesting, what people will say about this video. Okay, cool. So yeah, this is kind of like the final look that we have for this photo. So yeah, this is kind of the look. So this is before, this is after, and yeah. So I know I only edited 2 images. I didn't think I'd talk this much. I think I would have been more productive if I wouldn't have talked too much and wouldn't have subdued myself to pre-workout at 4 o'clock in the morning. But yeah, I edited 2 images and they were kind of from 2 different scenes, and hopefully you took away something valuable from this in regards to how I think about photo editing on iPhone photos. And one thing I do want to also say too, in regards to iPhone photography, is, and one thing I wanted to show as well, is you don't need a fancy camera to be able to make a beautiful image. And that's one thing that I've always wanted to kind of carry across all my photos, or that's kind of one thing I've always wanted to carry across my photography, is like whatever tool that you have is the best tool that you have. And I think that's something I learned from Casey Neistat. And it's like whatever tool is in your pocket, that's the tool you have. Wow, I just spit. Dang, I went far. Blah. So yeah, let's just redo that. So yeah, whatever tool is in your pocket is the best tool, or whatever tool that you have accessible is the tool you have. And I mean, when I started freelance, I shot on an iPhone 5S, and that's not because I didn't want anything else to be able to shoot with, but that's all that I had, and I made it work. And I saw that I could make beautiful images even with an iPhone 5S. If you want to tell a story, if you want to show your photography off, start shooting with an iPhone, and then getting better at that. And when the time comes where you need to upgrade to a better camera, you're gonna have the necessary tools and necessary skills to be able to be like, okay, I've done this on an iPhone for so long and I've gotten really good. When you get a camera, you're gonna be 10 times better, because you understand composition, you understand more of the simplicities of maybe the photography and the photo editing and stuff like that. Having less things to worry about when it comes to photography and photo editing for me has expanded my creativity and balance, because it gives me restrictions. So it's like literally just, you see a cool place, I'm like, oh, that's a really cool photo. Like, let me just take the photo, cool, let me edit within 5 minutes, and that's it. And that allows the process to become so much more simplified. And also, I just don't think about too many different things. I don't think about lenses, I don't think about anything like that. And I think that allows me to capture stories quicker, and allows me to kind of get my ideas out quicker, maybe in regards to like colors and stuff like that. So I think that's something that's very special about iPhone photography and iPhone editing, at least. Yeah, so thank you God for this day. Thank you for tuning in, and hopefully there will be more YouTube videos in the future. Hopefully more, I guess, I'm not gonna say on a routine basis, because it's not gonna be routine, but hopefully more future YouTube videos in the future. Hopefully more future YouTube videos. So, and with that, bid you adieu.